Okay, so now that we have completed the design of our business card, I'm going to save this file before we continue with anything else. I'm going to go into File, Save As, and I'm just going to call it Acme Biz Card. Then click on Save. You can, of course, click on the text tool, click on the name, and just start typing people's names. Unfortunately, this will take you a very, very long time, especially if you're dealing with dozens or hundreds of employees. So instead, we're going to use a feature in Photoshop that's going to allow us to automate this entire process. So I'm going to click on the cancel button, or you can also use the escape key on the keyboard. You can find the automation tool to replace text in Photoshop by going into Image, Variables, Define. This is going to bring up the variables window. You have two options, Define and Data Sets. We're going to focus on the Define view first. Under Layer, you can click on this drop down and you will see the name of all the layers in this document. And there's only two layers that we can adjust at the moment. Your name and title and your contact info. We're going to need a lot more than that. So what I'm going to do for now is press cancel. And we're going to focus on creating more text layers so that we can define them appropriately. So first, I'm going to disable your contact info here and just focus on name and title. Notice how that is just one layer. We need to split those into two layers. So I'm simply going to duplicate it. I'm going to select that layer and press Ctrl J, Command J on the Mac to duplicate. So now we have those two layers. The layer on top will be the name layer. So I'm just going to double click on it and just call it name. The layer below that will be the title. So again, I'm going to double click on it and call it title. I'm going to disable the name layer. So we were only looking at the title. I'm going to click on the text tool and I'm going to delete the name here line and delete that space. Click on the move tool and drag the title down. Enable the name layer. And once again, click on the text tool and delete the title from the name layer. So now we have one layer that contains the name and one layer that contains the title. Now we got to do the same thing for the contact information. So we need a phone, email, website, address, city, state, line. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to start with one layer. I'm going to delete all the other items on this layer. So we have the phone. I'm going to duplicate it, Ctrl J, Command J on the Mac. The copy layer will be the email. And I'm going to click on the move tool and drag it down. Press T on the keyboard to select the type tool, double click to make an edit. Type in email. You can press Control Enter, that's Command Return on the Mac to commit the change, or click on the checkbox that appears on the options bar. This time I'm going to show you how to duplicate layers in a different way. I'm going to click on the move tool, hold Alt, Option on the Mac, and click and drag to duplicate that layer. And now you have a duplicate. In this layer will be the website. Control Enter, that's Command Return on the Mac, and rename the layer, which will be website. Once again, I'm going to click on the move tool, hold Alt, Option on the Mac, click and drag, and this will be the address. Control Enter, Command Enter on the Mac, and I'm going to rename this layer to address. And we're going to duplicate this line one last time. And this will be the state, city, and zip code. Call this one state. Just for the sake of simplicity, I know that it contains the state, the city, and the zip. I'm going to click and drag it down to the end. Now we've got to make sure that the design looks okay before we can move into the automation. I think that we need a little more space in between each of the lines. So I'm going to make sure that state is selected. I'm going to press the V key on the keyboard and I'm going to drag it down slightly right about here. Then I'm going to hold Shift and click on phone. It's going to select those 5 layers: phone, email, website, address, and state. Then I got to make sure that the move tool is selected. and I can click on this icon here, which will distribute the layers to their vertical centers. So watch what happens. It just moves all the layers down so that there's equal space in between all of them. Now, if we go back into Image, Variables, Define Variables, click on Layer, you'll see that we have name, title, phone, email, website, address, and state. Those are the layers that we're going to be working with. If we select name, we can define what type of replacement we will do, a visibility or a text replacement. We want to do a text replacement. And we got to give this a variable name. I'll simply call it name using lowercase letters because this layer takes care of the name in the business card. Then I can click on this icon here to move to the next layer, which is the title. Once again, click on the checkbox and type title. The name of the layers do not need to match the text replacement name. However, in this case, it makes sense that they do. So we're going to match them all simply using lowercase letters. I'm going to move to the next one. Phone, text replacement, phone. You could also click on the drop down and just select the next one. Notice that the layers that have been defined have an asterisk next to them. Click on email, text replacement, again, email. Move to the next one, website. Move to the next one, address. And finally, state. And obviously this layer also contains city and zip, but we're simply calling it state. So now that we've defined all the layers that are going to have the text replace, we can move on to the next step. And that is by clicking on the drop down and selecting datasets. You can also use the keyboard shortcuts Control-1, Control-2. That's Command-1 and Command-2 on the Mac. Click on datasets and we're going to create a brand new dataset. So I'm going to click on this icon here. And notice that the layers that we define appear here. We can give this dataset a name. So we'll just call it John Smith. And value, we can change the street to 123 Main Street to 123 Broadway. And if I click on the next button, you'll see how the Broadway text was updated on the business card. And we can continue making changes to all the lines on this variable data set. And when we're done, we can click on this button here to create a new data set name for a different person. In this case, Jane Smith. And then you would go in through each individual line and adjust the differences between them. The downside of doing it this way is that you're manually inputting each line. Instead, it's much easier to import a CSV file. I'm going to press OK for now, and I'm going to show you how to import a CSV file so that you don't have to create each dataset by hand in Photoshop.